download a version. It comes into my downloads folder. There it is. I'm just going to move it onto the desktop. And the other thing is you can create a shareable link. And I just want to update it. It said it noticed I'd made some changes until the last time. So it updates that. And now I can copy that URL. And again, I would go into that week where we had, so that was in class 2, and this was the in-class assignment, and I would go in there. So I'm just going to switch myself to student mode, go to activities, into class 2, and there's the actual assignment, and I need to click on the assignment to get inside. You know that you're inside the assignment when you see all of this business right here with the assessment name, the number of questions, and it tells you what the completion date and the evaluation dates are. So at that point, I could have uploaded an image or uploaded the URL and just pasted that in there, or I could have done both. But you'll notice this week, it's changed over to doing evaluations. And it's showing my own submission and the submission of 2 other people. So let me begin then with evaluating my own work. And I simply click on it, and it will load up the URL. So in this case, I submitted a URL. I just copy that, Command-C. I can Command-T to give me another tab in my browser, Command-V to paste that in, and it should take me to that post. So I can look at it, evaluate it. I'm just going to move it over here to the side, and I can now take a look at a model response. What does a model response look like? Now you'll notice that it's giving me 5 different questions. The first question is the visual, and here's the question that you're asked of it. Is the visual cropped for the appropriate distribution channel? Instagram square versus Twitter or Facebook rectangle? Well, I can tell that it's a square, so it's cropped in the correct format. Is it recognizable, of good quality, and free from defects and distortions? I'm not being biased just because it's mine, but it looks like it's a good quality image, and doesn't look like there's any distortions in that image, and it doesn't suffer from a lack of quality. So I would say, so far, so good. If I'm not sure, I could check to see what would a model response look like. And it gives me some different things to look at here. It's saying the image above is too dark and difficult to make out what is going on in the image. The image above lacks the 1-to-1 square aspect ratio for Instagram. And the image above is properly cropped and of good quality, with the focus being on a brightly colored subject contrasted against a gray backdrop. This helps to reinforce the idea of personal health and well-being presented in the text. So if we look at that, it's talking about increase your health and quality of life, walk to work today, move TO. About the only thing I don't like about this is composition, but that's not what the question's asking me at this point. I would say that it's not using the rule of thirds. So if we divided that into thirds, vertically and horizontally, look to where those third lines intersect. So there's a point of interest, there's a point of interest, there's a point of interest, and there's a point of interest. So offsetting the subject to the left or to the right, and either raising or lowering where that subject is relative to the camera would have given us better results. But these are shopped images that we're using, but be aware of that composition really is important. Anyway, this gives me some model responses to help me gauge my assessment. And if you look at this, it's asking me, is the image cropped for the appropriate square dimensions for the distribution channel Instagram? If yes, award the point. Okay, so I'm awarding it to myself. Save, and it goes on to the next question. Criteria 2. Is the image easily recognizable, or is it difficult to make out what is going on in the image? If it's recognizable, award a full point. If it's so-so, award a half point. If it's completely obscure and almost impossible to discern, then give 0. So here, in this case, it's not an all or nothing. You may award a full point or anything in between that and 0, like a half point or a 0. So I'm going to give myself a full point. Now, you don't need to give feedback when you've awarded full points, but if there's an issue, it would be important to point it out here to the person. So I'm just going to award the full point. I type in a 1 there, just put in a 1, and then save, and it goes on to the next criteria. So this is the same criteria for the original question. There are 3 criteria that we're measuring. Now, is the quality of the image good? Is it free from defect or distortion? Assuming that defects are not an intrinsic part of the style of the image, because you might have an image that's very gritty and grungy and has texture overlaid, and you're doing that to create a mood. Is it good resolution? In other words, you don't see any pixelation. If all 3 of these elements are good, award a full point. If any one of them are questionable, then award a half point. If there's no image used, then award 0. So I would say I get a full point for that. And then moving on to the next one. Juxtaposition. The text and the visual work together to generate new meaning. That is either clever, surprising, or humorous. It causes us to see the issue in a refreshing and or challenging new way from a different perspective or in a different light. So if it was really clever and you were wowed by its cleverness, give it a full 2. If it was really quite good, then give it a 1.5. If it was pretty obvious but still meaningful and on point, then give it a 1. If it kind of missed the mark and doesn't really make a clear point, then give it a 0.5. If either the text or the image were missing, award a 0. So again, variable grading from 0 to 2. So when I look at mine, streetcars, subways, light rails, politicians move like snails. Okay. I mean, it's good. I'm not blown away by the cleverness of it. In my own defense, I was making it up right there on the spot. So I'm going to give myself a 2, just to be fair. No, I'm going to give myself a 1.5. I think I could have done better. So I'm going to save, and it says, oh, well, that's weird. Why would it say enter a whole number? It doesn't allow fractional numbers. That's interesting. Well, that's good to know. So I'm just going to give it full marks. That seems to be all or nothing in my books. But maybe a little feedback. Maybe a bit more thought on the text. Okay. And then save, and moving on to the next question. So there are 5 questions. I'm now on the second question, and this relates to messaging. So the text and the visual work in harmony to generate new meaning that is either clever, surprising, or humorous. It causes us to see the issue in a different perspective or different light. The Move To hashtag for the awareness campaign has been included. Again, it gives a model response. This is the submission. So in this case, I put in not just the URL, but I also inserted the image. so that the evaluator didn't have to go and load the image with a URL like it did over here. It's actually embedded. Okay, so criteria 2, campaign hashtag. Was it included? Yes, it was. Is it recognizable and easy to read at a size and a place where it's not competing with the main text or obscuring the image? Give it a full mark. Otherwise, a 0. Okay, it's in a pretty recognizable area down here, and it's not really obscuring anything important. Boom. I'm moving on to the third question, and so on. So again, I need to read the criteria and then award the points. And I'm just going to quickly go through this. The clarity, the positioning of text relative to the image is such that it can be clearly seen and understood, both together and apart from one another. So do they kind of connect spatially to one another in a meaningful way? Do they read clearly on their own? And do they work together? So I'm allocating 1 point and then moving on to the next criteria. Harmony. So, this is a design principle. The text is laid out in a manner that's well thought out, makes good spatial connections between other text elements and image elements. Does it lay out in a way that shows the creator was thinking about spatial connections and positioning of all the elements in a way that achieves proper balance, harmony, and unity? Then give it a 1. If it seems like it's kind of randomly thrown together on the page with no obvious spatial connections being made between things, then no point. So here I allocate the point and then on to the next question. So, spelling and grammar, are they correct? Yes. So I'm allocating the 2 points. Save and submit. So I've completed that assessment. Oh, look at that. I got 11 out of 11. That's very good. And then I would complete the assessments for the other 2 peers of mine in the class, for Gaynor and Yu-Chi. So I'll continue that, but that concludes the demo.